There is something deeply disorienting about lying in bed, completely exhausted and feeling the mind refuse to stop. The body is still, the room is dark, every outer condition for rest is in place. And yet inside, something keeps moving, turning things over, replaying moments, rehearsing tomorrow as if rehearsal could somehow protect you from it. This is one of the most common and least talked about forms of suffering in modern life. Not dramatic suffering, quiet suffering, the suffering of a person who cannot find their way to rest, even when rest is right there. Buddhist wisdom has something to say about this, not as doctrine, but as medicine, as practical, honest guidance for a mind that has forgotten how to soften. Welcome to Mindfulness. Tonight we explore 7 things to gently tell yourself each evening. Reflections rooted in ancient teaching on impermanence, release and compassion that will slowly, surely begin to change the way you meet the night. Each one is simple, each one is true, and together they become a doorway into the sleep you have been looking for. 1. My mind has worked hard today. It has earned its rest. There is something most people never think to do at the end of the day, and that is to actually thank the mind. We thank people who help us. We thank the food that nourishes us. But the mind, that tireless, invisible worker that has been sorting, processing, planning, worrying, creating, and deciding from the moment you woke up, rarely receives a single word of acknowledgement. And so it keeps going. It keeps working long after the sun has set, because no one ever told it that it was allowed to stop. In Buddhist psychology, the mind is not the enemy of rest. The mind is simply doing what it has been trained to do: survive, solve, and anticipate. When you cannot sleep, it is often not because something is wrong with you, it is because the mind has never been formally released from its duties. This is what the first evening reflection does. When you say to yourself quietly and sincerely, "My mind has worked hard today. It has earned its rest," you are not dismissing what happened, you are completing it. You are drawing a gentle but firm boundary between the doing of the day and the being of the night. The Buddha taught something profound about the nature of mental fatigue. He observed that suffering is not only caused by what happens to us, but by the relentless turning of thought around what happens to us. The mind, he said, is like a wheel, and a wheel left to itself will keep spinning. It needs something to slow it, not force. Force creates resistance, but intention, a kind, deliberate intention to rest. Think about that for a moment. Not suppression, not forcing the thoughts away, simply saying, "You have done enough. You have held enough. You may now put it down." There is also a layer of self-compassion in this reflection that many people are not used to giving themselves. We live in a world that measures worth in output, in productivity, in how much was accomplished, how quickly, how perfectly. And when you lie down at night inside that kind of world, the mind looks for unfinished tasks like a dog sniffing out a bone. It does not know how to stop searching unless you teach it. So tonight, try this. Before you close your eyes, place one hand gently over your heart, or simply hold the intention in your chest and say, "My mind has worked hard today. It has earned its rest." Say it slowly. Say it like you mean it, because you do. The thinking will not vanish immediately. Some thoughts will still drift through. Let them. You are not trying to create silence. You are simply no longer feeding the wheel, and slowly, without struggle, it will begin to slow. This is where sleep lives, not in the absence of thought, but in the releasing of the need to think. 2. Whatever is unfinished will still be there tomorrow. Tonight I am not responsible for any of it. One of the quietest forms of suffering is the feeling of incompleteness, that low, persistent hum of "there is still more to do." It follows you from the kitchen to the bedroom. It sits at the edge of the mattress while you try to relax. It whispers in the space between one breath and the next. You haven't finished. You haven't solved it. You haven't figured it out yet. And here is the painful irony. Lying awake thinking about unfinished things does not finish them. It only finishes you. Buddhist teaching has a word for this kind of mental grasping: upadana. It is often translated as attachment or clinging, but it also describes this very specific experience of the mind refusing to release what it is holding. The mind wraps itself around an unresolved situation, like a hand around a rope, pulling, holding, unable to let go even when the holding causes pain. What loosens that grip is not willpower, it is wisdom. Specifically, the wisdom of understanding that the night is not a continuation of the day, it is a different state of existence entirely. The ancient Buddhist teachers understood that the rhythm of waking and sleeping was itself a teacher, a daily reminder that we are not meant to carry everything forward. Some things must be set down so that they can be picked up again with fresh hands. When you say to yourself, "Whatever is unfinished will still be there tomorrow, tonight I am not responsible for any of it," you are not being careless, you are being wise. You are recognizing that your capacity to actually handle the unfinished things is restored by rest, not by anxiety. The problem you cannot solve at 11 o'clock at night will often solve itself by 8 in the morning, after sleep has quietly reorganized your thinking. This reflection is also an act of trust. Trust in continuity. Trust that the world will not collapse because you chose to rest. Trust that you are allowed to exist for a few hours outside the reach of obligation. Try saying it tonight. Slowly, let the words land. Whatever is unfinished will still be there tomorrow. Tonight, I am not responsible for any of it. Notice the small release in the chest when you do. That release is not laziness. That is wisdom recognizing itself. 3. I do not need to understand everything that happened today. Some days make sense. You can trace the arc from morning to night and see how one thing led to another, but other days are stranger. Something was said that you cannot quite interpret. Something happened that does not fit into any category you have. Someone looked at you in a way that you have been quietly turning over for hours, trying to decode what it meant. The need to understand is one of the most exhausting things the mind does, and it is one of the hardest to recognize as a source of suffering, because understanding feels useful, it feels productive. The mind says, if I can just figure out what that meant, I will be able to rest. But the truth is that clarity does not always come from more thinking. Sometimes it comes from releasing the question entirely. The Buddha did not promise his students that they would understand everything. He promised them something more valuable, that they could learn to sit comfortably in the presence of uncertainty without being destroyed by it. This quality, the ability to let a question exist without demanding an immediate answer, is sometimes called equanimity. And it is one of the most peaceful states a human being can inhabit. When you tell yourself, I do not need to understand everything that happened today, you are practicing equanimity. You are releasing the mind from a task it was never fully equipped to complete in the first place. Because the truth is, many things in life are not meant to be understood on the same day they occur. Understanding is often slow. It arrives in the morning, in the middle of the week, months later, sometimes in a dream. Let the day be mysterious if it needs to be. Let it be uncertain. Let it be unresolved. The not knowing is not a failure. It is simply where you are right now. And right now, what you need is not answers. What you need is rest. So tonight, give yourself permission to not know. Whisper it gently. I do not need to understand everything that happened today. And then let the question float, untethered, ungrasped, like a leaf on the surface of still water. 4. I release the version of today that I wished had been different. This one is subtle, but it may be one of the most sleep-stealing patterns that exists. It is the habit of running a parallel version of the day in your mind, the day as it should have gone, the conversation as it should have happened. The version of yourself that said the right thing, handled it better, was calmer, wiser, more prepared. We do not always notice we are doing this. It does not announce itself as suffering. It arrives dressed as problem-solving, as preparation, as self-improvement. The mind says, if I replay this enough times, I will know what to do next time. But replaying the past does not build the future. It only deepens the groove of regret. In Buddhist teaching, this is sometimes called the second arrow. The first arrow is the thing that actually happened, the difficult moment, the mistake, the awkward exchange. The second arrow is the one we shoot at ourselves afterward, the judgment, the comparison, the imagining of how it could have been. The first arrow may have been unavoidable. The second arrow is always a choice. When you say, "I release the version of today that I wished had been different," you are choosing not to fire the second arrow. You are not pretending the day was perfect. You are not dismissing the lesson in what happened. You are simply refusing to suffer twice, once in the living of it, and once more in the replaying of it. This reflection is an act of self-mercy. It is saying, what happened, happened. The alternate version of today does not exist anywhere except inside this mind, and I am choosing right now to let it go. Not because I do not care, but because I care enough about my own peace to stop punishing myself with a story that was never real. Tonight, breathe in, and as you breathe out, imagine exhaling the imagined better version of today. Let it dissolve. What remains is reality, imperfect, complete, and already past. That is enough. You are enough. Rest now. 5. The people I love are safe in this moment, and so am I. Worry about others may be the most invisible form of sleeplessness. We do not always name it as worry. It hides inside the role of caring, inside responsibility, inside love, and it is precisely because it hides there that it is so hard to put down at night. You think about a friend who is struggling. You think about a family member whose situation is difficult. You think about the people you love and the things you cannot fix for them. And the mind begins to spiral quietly, persistently, through every possible outcome, every worst case, every way things might go wrong. And underneath all of that is something the Buddha identified as one of the deepest causes of human suffering: the desire to control what cannot be controlled. We love people, and because we love them, we want to protect them from pain. But the nature of life is that pain finds everyone eventually, and our lying awake at night rehearsing their difficulties does not protect them. It only costs us our rest. There is a practice in Buddhism called the Brahma Viharas, the 4 divine abodes of the heart. One of them is mudita, which means sympathetic joy, the ability to rest in the well-being of others without needing to manage it. Another is upekkha, equanimity, the ability to love people deeply while also trusting that their lives are unfolding in the way they need to unfold, even when that unfolding is painful. When you say to yourself, "The people I love are safe in this moment, and so am I," you are practicing both. You are bringing the mind back from the imagined future, from the terrible things that might happen, and returning it to the only place that is real now. This moment in which most often the people you love are simply asleep, as you too should be. This is not denial. If there is something genuine to act on, you will act on it in the morning with clarity and strength. But in this moment, in this bed, in this quiet, there is nothing to do. There is only this breath, and the next one, and the gentle, honest recognition that right now you are safe, and for now, that is everything. 6. I am more than the events of this day. There is a quiet trap that the mind falls into on difficult days. It begins to believe that the day's events are the whole story, that what went wrong today is a summary of who you are, that the frustration you felt, the mistake you made, the way you fell short of your own expectations, that all of this adds up to some definitive verdict about your worth. It does not. It never does. But the tired mind at the end of a long day does not always have the perspective to remember this on its own. Buddhist philosophy offers something radical here. It is the teaching of anatta, the idea that the self is not a fixed, solid, permanent thing. You are not a single, unchanging entity that can be summarized by a day, a mood, a failure, or a success. You are a flowing, changing, living process. What you were this morning is not what you are right now. What you are right now is not what you will be tomorrow. This teaching is not meant to be destabilizing. It is meant to be liberating. Because if you are not fixed, if the self is fluid and open, then no single day can define you. No single mistake can contain you. No difficult chapter can be the final word. When you say, I am more than the events of this day, you are placing yourself back inside the larger story of your life. You are remembering that you have survived hard days before, that you have grown in ways you did not expect, that there is a depth to who you are that one difficult afternoon cannot touch. This reflection is also a quiet form of courage. It is the courage to refuse reduction, to refuse the smallness that shame and self-judgment want to assign to you. The courage to say, I was here today, I moved through it, and whatever it was, it is only one frame of a very long film. You are not your worst moment. You are not your most awkward interaction. You are not the sum of your unfinished to-do list. You are a living being, breathing right now, worthy of rest. Say it softly tonight. I am more than the events of this day, and let the truth of it settle slowly into the bones. 7. I soften. I release. I return to myself. This is the final reflection, and in some ways it is the one that all the others have been preparing you for. Throughout this time together, you have been gently releasing the weight of the unfinished, the alternative version of today, the worry you carry for others, the grip of self-judgment. Each reflection has been a slow loosening, like fingers uncurling from something held too tightly for too long. And now we arrive here, at the threshold of sleep, at the place where the day finally, completely lets go of you, if you let go of it first. I soften, I release, I return to myself. 3 movements, 3 invitations. Let us stay with each one. Soften. The body holds the day. You may not notice it until you are given permission to release it, but it is there, in the jaw, in the shoulders, in the belly, in the hands. The body braces. It has been bracing since you woke up, perhaps even since before you woke up, carrying the residue of yesterday's tension into a new morning. Softening is not a technique, it is a recognition. When you say, I soften, you are simply noticing the holding, and then allowing, not forcing, the body to settle. The breath deepens on its own. The weight of the limbs becomes real. The mattress becomes something you actually arrive into rather than something you lie on top of. Release. This word in the Buddhist tradition carries enormous depth. The Pali word for release is vimutti, and it is one of the words used to describe the state of liberation itself. Not a grand dramatic liberation, but a simple moment-by-moment freedom from clinging. Every time you release something, an anxious thought, a gripped emotion, a story you have been rehearsing, you taste vimutti. You taste in miniature what the Buddha called the unshakable peace of a heart that no longer insists on things being other than they are. Tonight, release the thought that is still circling, not because it is unimportant, but because you and it will meet again in the morning, and the meeting will go better when you are rested. Release the emotion that has not quite found its name. You do not need to name it tonight. Release the version of tomorrow you are already rehearsing in your mind. Tomorrow will arrive without your rehearsal. It always does. Return to yourself. This may be the most tender of the 3, because somewhere in the busyness and the noise and the demands and the performances of the day, you moved away from yourself, not entirely, but partially. You became a role, a function, a response to other people's needs and expectations. This is not a criticism. It is simply what happens in a day lived among other people, in a world with requirements. But now, in the quiet, you are invited back. Back into your own body. Back into your own breath. Back into the simple, uncomplicated fact of existing, without agenda, without performance, without the need to be anything other than what you are. There is a beautiful image from the Zen tradition of a river that has been disturbed by rain, turbulent, cloudy, fast-moving, and then, as the storm passes, slowly becoming still again, clear again. You can see the riverbed, You can see the light reaching all the way down. This is what returning to yourself feels like, not something achieved, something revealed when the disturbance finally settles. So tonight, close this day with these 3 words moving through you like a slow, quiet breath. I soften, feel the body release its armor. I release, feel the mind put down what it has been carrying. I return to myself, feel the quiet recognition of simply being here, alive, present, enough. Sleep, when it comes from this place, is not just rest, it is restoration. It is the body and mind remembering their nature. And tomorrow, when you will wake as someone who treated themselves with kindness at the end of a long day. Someone who chose peace over rumination. Someone who understood, even for one night, what it means to truly let go. Rest now. You have done enough. You are enough. The night is quiet, and it is yours. These 7 reflections are not meant to be memorized perfectly or recited like a ritual. They are simply gentle reminders offered to a tired mind at the end of a long day. If even one of them reached you tonight, if one of them softened something that had been tight or quieted something that had been loud, then they have done their work. Come back to them whenever the nights feel heavy. They will be here. Sleep well.